Hi, everyone. This is George Cao, and I've got Tad Hargrave here. I've done a couple of, I think at least one other conversation with him recently. And here today, we're going to talk about a very interesting idea, which is pay what you can or pay what you want. This is a pricing model where instead of charging a set fee, the client, the workshop attendee, the student gets to determine what fee they pay for the service you're providing. Now, this is not something to do lightly, as you'll hear in this conversation. And Tad has been doing this now for, 10 years plus. And so I was just actually reading an interview that he had with somebody else from 2009. So back in 2009, when I started my business for the first time, he was already several years into trying this pay what you can thing. So he's got a ton of experience. I have a lot of questions to ask him. I think if you're at all, those of you watching this, if you're at all interested in the idea of letting others set the value of your services and some of your services, maybe not all of it, maybe one or a few, then this will be very interesting for you. So Tad, thank you so much for being here.
Man, it's so good to be here. I don't get a chance to talk about this a lot, so I'm often doing it, but I don't often have a chance to unpack why I do it the way I do it. So
Totally. Yeah, you've done, have you even counted how many workshops you've done with pay what you can model? It's probably in the hundreds, if not more.
I don't have hundreds, but it's probably somewhere between 100 and 200. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So the first question I have for you is from your experience, what type of service or product or program is pay what you can best for, and what type is it not good for?
Well, I would actually flip that question and say that it can work for anything.
Okay.
I know some people have done it with one-on-one coaching. I tried it. I didn't like it. I didn't get paid an amount that felt good to me.
Okay.
But I know people who do it. That's been their thing. Some people do it with products. Sometimes it's a straight up pay whatever, and sometimes it's more of a, pick your price, like 3 different options, or something like that, or a sliding scale, pay anywhere from this to this, or live workshops, is another thing. So the thing I would say is probably best to pick one aspect of your business and have that be the pay what you can.
Yeah.
So for example, you hear about these pay what you can restaurants, but it's not like actually usually the restaurants pay what you can all the time.
Right.
It's not Sundays or pay what you can, or there's always this one bowl, this little rice bowl thing. That's always pay whatever you want. So it's kind of conditionalized. There's certain parts of the business that work like that, and other parts where it's just a straight up fee.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend doing it for everything because it's, as we'll go into in this call, there's a lot of thinking and work, and it's not risk free is part of the thing. It's not always like doing pay what you can reduces. It reduces some of the risks, but it creates other risks. Namely, what if I don't pay them what it's worth?
Yeah.
What if they get offended?
Now, let me just clarify. One of your marketing teachings, or part of your marketing teaching, is to lower the risk for the customer so that they are more comfortable stepping across the line to do the transaction with you. So, that's a whole other conversation. So what you're saying here, that it doesn't necessarily reduce risk period, is that the client or the customer might feel like, well, gosh, I don't understand this model, and I'm feeling like, what if I'm stingy, or what if I'm pay too much?
And what if it just feels so weird and awkward? I'm going to sit through this whole thing, and the whole time I'll be wondering what to give, so I just won't go.
Yeah.
I'm going to deal with it. It's good to know that for some people, given a choice of pay what you can or a flat rate, they would actually pay the flat rate and feel much better about it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so obviously you've made it work well for your workshop. So I want to talk about that. I've heard you mention, I think maybe in one of our conversations, that you have discovered that people seem to pay you more when you're doing the pay what you can workshop, the pay what you can model for your workshops, than if you were to charge that same amount up front. Or rather, I should say, you earn more overall than you would if you.
That's probably the better way to say it. If I were to charge the amount that I think the program is worth, or the amount that would feel good to me, I get paid less than that. with Pay What You Can. But the upshot of the whole thing is that I do get more money because it's so much easier to market it. I have to do less rigmarole with market. It's like, so, a model that probably a lot of people listening to this are familiar with is you do the free intro, and that could be a 2-hour thing or the weekend workshop.
Uh-huh.
And that during that time, then you make the pitch for the, but of course, because you're making a pitch for this at a higher level coaching program or weekend, you've got to really be like, so here's the value, and you can do the price dropping and all that stuff, which I'm not demonizing. I'm not against it per se, but you've got to do a lot of that just to establish the value, like to help people appreciate what's in it. You've got to take a lot of time because how the hell would they understand what's involved and what it could do for them unless you tell them they've never been through it, and that's not their problem.
Yeah.
But with Pay What You Can, functionally, I'll do an intro, and then my pitch is like, so if you like this and you'd like to explore it more, come to my weekend.
Free intro, which helps to market the weekend workshop.
Yeah, that's how I did it when I first started. That was my whole business model. It was free intro to Pay What You Can weekend workshop. And in the beginning, there was no deposit on that. It was just people show up, pay whatever they want.
And just to clarify, the weekend workshop wasn't about Pay What You Can. It was about business, marketing, etc. It was using the Pay What You Can model. So could you envision other people, let's just say somebody who's doing sort of more spiritual or personal growth type of transformation?
Yeah. In fact, one of my colleagues out of Guelph, Ontario, Russell Scott, with awakentheguru.com.
Okay.
He does a number of things like that. And the whole Vipassana thing.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, Vipassana meditation. The last time I went, I paid $1,000. I think I had $1,000 for that. I probably
so could. Definitely, I would say there's a chance that, it's funny because I haven't done like a cross-industry study of, we'd have to really have everyone do the exact same approach. Yeah. But my guess is if you're teaching marketing and business and how to make money, this will probably do better for you than the other categories of like health, relationships, and spirituality. Okay. But Russell doesn't make terrible money, doing it. And this is the big, it's funny, when I did a workshop in San Francisco with a friend of mine, Amatma, she ran for a while a gift economy naturopathic clinic. So you didn't have to pay. She was just, you pay if you wanted to. So I did this workshop called Fuck Money with this woman, Amatma. And it was interesting in the intro to the thinking about how we were going to talk about it.
Yeah.
We thought, well, we should figure out what are the like altruistic reasons and what are the selfish reasons to do this. Uh-huh. And the thing that was surprising for us when we were laughing is we kept coming up with more selfish reasons to do it than altruistic. Huh. But the big one is it just makes the marketing so much easier. In terms of word of mouth, people are probably a lot more likely to spread the word on a workshop that's Pay What You Can than one that's $2,000.
Yes.
It's a lot easier to pitch it. You can just meet somebody at a party and be like, come to my weekend workshop. Oh, how much is it? It's Pay What You Can. Just pay whatever you want at the end.
Yeah.
People will just sign up right there because the barrier of entry is so low. And again, some people it'll push back, but there's ways we can talk about to deal with that.
Yeah.
But it just makes everything, it saves so much time and so much money. So for me, it's made so much sense. The amount of work that I would need to do to really sell a legit, fully priced weekend and get people to come to it. It's just way more than I want to do. I'd rather come and do the intro and be like, come the way,
Nice. Wow, that's powerful. That's a powerful idea because I know there are probably a lot of people watching this who want to earn more money doing weekend workshops. So, so we've established that it is possible to do this for higher priced workshops. What about Pay What You Can versus two things? Pay What You Can versus a low fee event, like something you would have charged, $20 to $50 for. And the other question is Pay What You Can versus sliding scale. So,
okay. Well, the first thing I'd say is, so essentially I did free workshops, 2-3 hour workshops when I started for about 5 years. And I was still figuring out how I saw marketing, but as it started to click and I felt like I was hitting my game a bit more, every other workshop, somebody would come up to me at the end and pay me. I'd be like, this is a free workshop. And they'd look at me like, and then they write the check and they give it to me. And that was the moment where I realized, like, oh, maybe it's time to start charging for these. So for the intro workshops, now I charge like 40 at the door, 30 in advance.
Got it.
So I actually don't do pay what you can on the intros because it just seems like for that one, it's actually such a small amount of money that most people, it's not going to bother them too much and easier to just keep it simple.
Cool. Okay.
But then, so if it's that amount, I would just charge it. For the
sliding scale,
that can also work. I mean, it's interesting. It depends. Like, is the sliding scale 0 to a certain amount, or are you being like within this range? I've done a workshop like that where it was it's called the Hot Box. And it's a very small workshop. So here's the deal: 5 people. Each person gets an hour of kind of being hot seated by the group. Where we, what's your problem? We take 30 minutes to just understand it. Then there's a lot of advice given, but because it was limited to 5 people, I thought, man, if I do pay what you can. And it just happens to be one of those days where everyone pays on the low end. I'm going to feel really terrible.
Yeah.
It's and especially if I'm paying for a venue and I travel to the city to do it So what I realized is a sliding scale made more sense there. So I did 250 to 500. So you can pay anywhere in there. Okay. And I gave that range. So, whereas if it's a workshop where I'm going to have 20 people, I wouldn't consider putting a low end on it, although I do a deposit, which is, a part of the whole model that I use. Yeah.
So then let's get into that, right? So you collect a deposit for even when the price is pay what you can.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So I went to Seattle one time to do a weekend workshop, and throughout the course of all my promotions, I think it was like 36 people had registered, and then some had to drop off. But the night before, I think there was like 24 people registered. And I was calling people just to be like, hey, do you have any questions, any directions? Yeah, nice. And people were saying, oh, no, I can't make it. Oh, I guess I should have called you. Yeah, we're cleaning the house because there was no deposit, there was no real skin in the game for them. Yeah. So there were 12 people that came to the workshop in the end. I printed all the workbooks. Yeah. I paid for a venue that was bigger than I needed. Wow. And it was so heartbreaking, and I was so angry about it. And hurt, So that's when I decided, okay, what's an amount? And it's a good question to ask yourself, like, what's an amount that I could get per person that if they didn't show, I wouldn't resent it? So for me, it was $25 for a day-long workshop, $100 for a weekend. Now, the truth is, I think the cleanest version of this would be that as soon as they show up, everyone gets a $100 bill, like their deposit gets refunded or whatever. That's just been a logistical hassle. Oh, okay. For me, and I haven't done it, and people haven't seemed to mind. Every once in a while, people, I thought this was pay what you can, and then we'll have a conversation. I'll say, look, if you need that refunded at the workshop, we can. Yeah. And if that amount of money is a problem, that's okay. But this is pretty much 100% designed around the no-show thing because I'm tired of it. Right. And so it's been basically a non-issue. Very few people have ever. I don't know if anyone's ever gotten really upset by it. Because some people I was like, look, if you can afford $25, just come. That's the pay what you can.
And one other idea that I saw you do somewhere is a post-dated deposit check.
Not a post-dated deposit. So that was more the post-dated thing had to do with.
What about the post-dated deposit? It could be, right?
It could be, yeah, it's true. You could have somebody write a post-dated check for that date for the weekend. Yeah. Or after the weekend, right? Where you only cash it after the weekend if they don't show. Right. Yeah, that would be another model. I think that would be really good. Although the challenge of that is people have to get you the check and mail it to you, and there's some timing issues around that. And
well, no, but don't they have to, when they register, don't they have to pay the deposit right away?
They do. But I'm just saying, if it was a check, like a written check,
right.
And says I'm going to Toronto, they have to mail it. And then what if it arrives at my home, but I'm already on it?
Yeah. True. So it's easier to do electronic registration.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you do the registration, do you do applications, or do you just a registration form?
For my weekend workshop, I do applications because there is a certain amount of screening. And like the last time in Toronto, there was somebody who I wasn't sure if they were a fit or not. Yeah. In the end, I decided, probably given where they're at, just certain things red flagged for me that I decided not to. Most of the time I accept most of the people who want to come in, but I do an application. So they apply and then they would be sent the link to pay the deposit.
Okay, cool. So have you ever actually declined people when they applied?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Just in Toronto, one person. There's a few people. It's just, sometimes because the kind of work they do is like they run a restaurant or something, and I'm just like, I'd give them the nature.
Not the ideal. Very, very much not the ideal client. And then on the application form, you mentioned pay what you can.
Yes, I believe I do. And that's all in the sales letter. It's like in the headline. It's a pretty hard to miss factor in the weekend workshop. But I believe there is
do you have a link to your sales letter that I could link to this call?
Yeah, absolutely.
Video? Okay. I'll be sure to put that in the notes of the video.
You bet.
So that's great. Yeah. So the application helps to vet and also gives some clarity about pay what. By the way, do you call it pay what you want or pay what you can? What's your preferred?
I do. I call it pay what you can. It was funny. First time I met Charles Eisenstein, it's like say pay what you want because it's better. Because I was like, dude, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm all right. But it's both is the reality,
Yeah.
Like it's the tension between the two.
Yes.
And we don't have a word for that because there's an amount they want to pay and there's an amount that they can pay, and those two amounts are different. So, I mean, and we may get to this at the end.
Pay what you must.
Pay what you are obligated to. At the end of the workshop, that's the thing I asked them to sit in the tension. I'm like, look, I know there's an amount you may want to pay and an amount you may can pay. So sit in the tension of those. And it's like decide on the amount that feels right for you. So it's a bit of both, yeah.
That's cool. That's actually part of your education about how to do the payment. And you do the education at the end of your event.
Yeah.
The very end.
Although, I do and I don't. I do the ask at the end, but there's actually a lot of education that's built in throughout it. And this is part of the thing. Like when I was sitting down for over beers with this street performer, Nick Nicholas, who looks frighteningly like Ozzy Osbourne, and does cups and balls. And, I've done magic for years and hung out with street performers a lot. And I said, what do you think is the biggest mistake that people make on their hat pitch? And the hat pitch is, at the end, it's like, ladies and gentlemen, you see my show. Here's my hat. Give me money. And he's like, it's too long. It's too much. It's like they wait and they kind of backload everything in. And so it's like joke after joke. It's like, if you're not sure what to do, how much to give, pull out a $5 from your wallet and give me your wallet, and like, it's like a million of these stock lines. Or they make a big 2-minute speech. And he's like, notice at the end of mine, I'm just like, ladies and gentlemen, this is my hat. This is my heart. This is my art. You know what to do. And people come and give him, all this money. So, but he's like, if you look at my show, he's like, there's certain moments in the show where he's mentioning like $5 here, $5 there. And he's 2 or 3 times he sets it up very clearly. And it's sometimes it's subtle, sometimes, but he's like, I was doing a show and this lady came up at the end and she said, you're fantastic. And she put $5 in my hat. So I pointed that out. And she said, and then like, so he would do that kind of thing.
Got it.
And so by the time you reach the end, the audience just has a very clear idea in their mind of what might be an appropriate amount to pay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of what is important about this model is educating the audience about what might be right. Because one of the questions you get if you don't do this is, well, what's a suggested amount, right?
Yeah. And I used to not, this was the interesting thing, like, because this has evolved for me. When I first started doing it, I just refused to tell anyone. And at a certain point I had a sense of what the average is, but I would never tell anyone because I never want anyone to feel like they were paying less than average.
Right.
And then there was a point where I realized I do need to give some context because it's weirding people out so much. They're just sitting there so uncomfortable the whole time. And so I realized it's probably kinder to give some context. But, it's both. There's two dynamics happening for me when I'm doing pay what you can. One is educating them to let them know, like helping them appreciate in a lot of different ways. Here's what this could mean to you financially, basically.
Yes.
Less so. Part of it is like, here's what you might pay anywhere else.
Yes.
For workshop. Here's what I've paid in the past for things like this. So there's that, I guess. What's the kind of market rate or value that people might ascribe to this? Number two is that helping them understand this is what this could do for you.
Yeah.
But number three, and this is, for me, it's got to be in there, is the taking the pressure off any particular amount. Making sure that at the end, it might seem like at the end, that's when you want to really put on the pressure and, subtly, sneakily, stealth tactics to get them to feel more pressure to pay more. But my take is like, actually at the end, there's so much pressure built up at that point already. It's immense. They've been sitting there the whole time wondering what they're going to pay. And I've been mentioning numbers and they've seen things in the sales letter and all this. So it's like a pressure cooker. So at that point, actually, I need to do everything I can to like take the lid off and let the pressure go a bit. Because what I want is, ironically, I think there's an argument to be made for the fact that they may actually pay you more if you do that. Because then they're actually, it's not coming from fear or indebtedness. It's more coming from reciprocity and a sense of generosity.
Yeah.
That's genuine. They're not pushing back against anything.
That's right.
You actually get to make a free choice. So I think you can make the case that you actually get more money, but also if they pay an amount that's more, and this is something I talk about in my pitch at the end, it's just like, if you pay more than you think it's worth or you can afford, you will resent it. That's true. And you will also, the word of mouth isn't going to be as good.
Yes.
You pay $20 more, just a little bit more than feels right. And something feels off when you leave and you don't rave about it. It's like, I'd rather you keep the $20 and rave about it and send me more people. And I'm just like, please get that makes me more money.
Yes.
Like cash in my bank account. So if you pay so I'm asking people to find the sweet spot for them of like, well, we can go into what I say in the pitch in the end, but
yeah. So, I mean, when you say you let the pressure off, what do you mean? How do you do that?
So this is a part of what I say at the end is I say, you saw the amounts that you could have paid.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about different numbers. And now here we are at the end, and you might imagine that now I'm wanting to get you to pony up, and that's true. But there's a number of things to consider. Number one, just to consider what this could do for your business if you really applied it.
Mm-hmm. Or your life or your relationships or whatever you're helping people transform.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just what's the impact this may have realistically if you were to really take it and work with it.
Yeah.
Number two, to know that you're not paying, and this is kind of building the pressure a bit, this one, but I'm like, you're not actually paying for your spot here because it's done. The weekend's over. So you can't get it back even if you want to. So actually, in reality, your spot was paid for by the people who came before you.
Wow. That's interesting.
And so who you're paying for is the people to come. So if you thought this was worthwhile and you'd like to see it continue, this is how it happens. Just real talk. It won't happen if you don't pay anything.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not you all personally, but if nobody pays, how could I afford to keep traveling around and doing these workshops? So it's like, this is the way it keeps going.
Right.
And then I say the third thing is, it's important for me that you don't pay more than you think this is worth or can afford. And I say, you might think, I get to the end. I just told some charming stories that are touching that now I'm going to try to get you to pay more. But if you do, you'll resent it. Checks bounce. It just becomes a pain. And all the people, you'll leave feeling, oh, he did something. He tricked me at the end and now I paid more. And that's no good for me. Financially, it's not good for the word of mouth. So it's like, I want you to pay an amount that feels like you leave feeling great about what you got.
Yeah.
But then the fourth thing is, don't pay less than you think it was worth and you can afford.
Yeah.
Because guilt's a terrible feeling to live with. And I wouldn't want you to have to live with that burden of guilt. So, I'll joke about it. But I'm like, so I just say, it's like I'm asking you to find a sweet spot. Mm-hmm. And the amount today is different than what it'll be in a year and different than maybe it was a year ago. And I get that you may want to pay more than you can afford right now. That's why it's pay what you can. This isn't charity. This is a community. This is, some people, it's like, I just tell people, it's like, I know, like one workshop I did in Toronto, one person, I think, paid $25 for the whole weekend, and one person paid $1,800.
Wow.
So, I just tell people, it's like, look, if you can afford to pay more, here's your moment.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't, if you're really, it's like, it's not your fault necessarily. It's just, these things happen. We get broke sometimes, priorities, and I'm happy you're here. I make more money by you being here with no extra time spent for me. So, so there's a lot of like, and letting people know that, hey, maybe you can't pay the amount that feels right for you right now, but next time I'm in town, you could spread the word for me. And that'll make me money, and you can tell your friends about this and talk it up. And that helps me, even if you don't do a social media blast, the fact that you just told 10 people, and next time I come back, they're like, oh, my friend was mentioning this person, that makes me money. So it's to me, that's just so immensely important that people genuinely are paying whatever they want to pay, not they get to the end and then all of a sudden it's like, if you don't pay this amount, it means you're not really seeing the value or committed, or you don't value me as a person. And at some of the workshops, I've been like, look, what you pay has nothing to do with my value as a human being. Like, this is not personal to me. It's just what you can afford, what you felt it was worth, and I get it. You might have already known a lot of this stuff and it was just a refresher, and that's different than it's blowing your mind and you've got a lot of money. So, and then I just tell people, it's like, whatever you pay, it's perfect. It's going to be the right amount. And thanks for coming, So it's that type of thing that I do.
So obviously you're getting, it's working for you. I mean, that's why you keep doing it, is because you would rather do this model. Like you said, the marketing's easier. You're earning at least as much as you think the workshop is worth for you.
Exactly. I mean, in terms of total dollars, the money works. If I charged a flat fee, this is the thing. If I charge a flat fee, I'd make more per person, but I bet you I'd have less people.
You have fewer people, exactly.
Or I would have to work so much harder for it
to get the same number of people there.
So,
and the thing is, really, not only are you receiving the funds from doing the event, you're receiving the enjoyment, the fulfillment of making the impact on these people's lives. And I think that's also what all of us want, is not just, we don't want just the money, and we don't want just the impact. Ideally, there's an intersection there. And
I'm receiving goodwill.
Right.
Just to bring it back to the selfish level again, the fact that I do this, pay what you can, there's an immense goodwill, which translates into word of mouth, which translates into, when I go to Toronto, I'll ask people, raise your hand if you've heard about me before. Almost everybody's hands go up.
Wow.
Meaning they didn't just see it on Facebook. A friend of them didn't just tell them about it yesterday. And so raise your hands if you've heard about my work from more than 3 people. And a ton of hands go up.
Wow.
And that's because I've done so many workshops in Toronto. But people go to workshops all the time and don't talk about it. But the fact that it's pay what you can becomes part of the conversation.
Totally. Now, let's talk a little bit about the fact that you seed numbers throughout the workshop. Not that, and I just want to bring in my perspective on this. I think I've seen pay what you can taught from a manipulative place, in my opinion. I don't feel that from you, just because I trust you. I trust your heart. I mean, you've done tremendous good through your business, and just you've helped so many people. But I have seen it taught as a formulaic. Now, it's not saying, yes, we're manipulating people, but that's kind of how I felt from the teaching I saw. It's like, oh man, you're suggesting this, you're suggesting that, and it didn't feel right to me. But I want to hear how you are doing it in a way that feels good to you.
Well, I think part of it is what's the intention of seeing the numbers? And there's a couple of intents. I guess there's the for them and for me. For me, it's I've got to sustain myself financially, and if people come and for a weekend workshop, marketing workshop, some people just walk in. It's is it $50 for is that appropriate?
So a big one is just educating them on the market value. I think that intention is right to me, because you're right. If we were at a restaurant, pay what you can, you're being served a plate of, quinoa kale.
Right.
Okay, $10 or,
Totally.
max
You've got
about
a sense of
$20.
ballpark because you've done that a lot, or it's like a pay what you can hotel.
Yeah,
Thing. Pay
of
what you
course.
can. We've done those things enough, but often a workshop like the kind that I
What
offer.
is it? Is it $2,000, $5,000, $20? Who knows?
Yeah, and so because part of what I saw was it was stressful for people. So this is the other side of it. To know with pay what you can is there's an immense. If you've never been on the receiving end of it, it is a very disconcerting thing to be sitting there the whole time wondering what you're going to pay.
Yeah.
And that's just stressful enough anyways, even if you know what
Now,
the market value is.
do you suggest any numbers on the sales page? Well,
The way I do it is I say, look, and sometimes I've done headlines with like, hey, it's attend a marketing workshop worth $1,800 for whatever you want to pay. But the main thing I've done, there's a few things. So sometimes I'll do that in the headline. I can't remember actually if it's in my sales letter now.
Yeah, and I'm going to put the link to the sales letter below the video for those of you who are wondering where it is. It's marketingforhippies.com. Well, Tad's website, in case for whatever reason the link is there. Marketingforhippies.com.
I sent you the wrong link. Yeah, marketingforhippies.com/RBIs and Radical Business Intensive, Edmonton.
Edmonton. EDMONTON. Okay.
So in this one, I didn't actually put that in the headline, but I have done in the past.
Okay.
And then when people go to pay, I give them 3 options. It's interesting. How is this? I'm even looking through my own sales level. How did I do this? Oh, yeah. So I say some important words on price.
Yeah, I'm actually going to share the screen, in fact, as I can here.
Yeah. And so I give them 3 options. I say, well, one is, and in the video on the top, I talk about this because, of course, this is going to be one of the major things on their mind.
Yeah.
So there's a video there. And in that, I talk about, and I have to redo the one for Edmonton here, but I say, look, Weekend Workshop, I think it's pretty great. Pay what you can. There are 3 options for payment. First is that one that I encourage you, or how do I start? I think you could pay full price if you want, which is $1,800.
Yeah, and we can watch the video, so no worries about. But it's interesting that you say $400 plus here. So I see the $400 number twice.
Well, let me actually, I'll go into that in a second. So I tell people the 3 options are: one is they can pay full price. Second is they can do 4 payments of $425, I guess it is, or $450. And then the third option is pay what you can. And I encourage people to do pay what you can. And I tell people in the video, and the reality of it is I started doing the full pay for 2 reasons. One is because it helped establish the market value. But number 2 is because I saw that some people were actually so uncomfortable with pay what you can, they did not come. And I learned this in Calgary. I was doing an intro, and this old couple, they were so lovely. And I had this great rapport with them during the intro. And then they on the follow-up card, they checked this box like, I might be interested in coming to the weekend workshop follow-up. So I did. I said, so do you think you're coming? They said, we don't think we will. And I said, oh no, how come? And they said, well, we just don't know if we can pay you what we think it's worth.
Oh, wow.
And so I saw okay, people are so uncomfortable about this. And I even had, I think, a couple of people ask me, could I just pay you up front? It would feel more comfortable for me. Mm-hmm. So the reality is I've never had anyone pay just $1,800 flat in advance. Mm-hmm. I've had 2, maybe 3 people do the 4 pay.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And almost everyone does pay what you can. But giving the options, it's a real moment where they have to kind of look at the pricing,
right,
and recognize it. And then at the very beginning of the workshop, another place I take pressure away is I say, so, I know you saw the amounts. Mm-hmm. I'm not suggesting that's what you pay. Right. That's just and I explain what I just explained here. Mm-hmm. Some people just feel so uncomfortable, so I want to give that as an option if people want it. Yes. And we'll talk more about money at the end, but just know that whatever you pay, that's the perfect amount. And then the $400 is just because I did this weekend workshop. So to sweeten the pot, I said, you'll get all of my products, which hilariously in this case worked out to $420. So hippie marketing, $420 was correct. Totally. But yeah, so so that was just an additional kind of bonus for them. Okay. And yeah, so the seating, the thing, and then also during the workshop, I'll just tell stories of workshops that I went to, and I'll mention how much I paid.
Right.
So it's kind of offhand, but it brings it back in.
Yes.
And I'll sometimes talk about workshops other people went to, how much they paid. So it's kind of becomes a threat. It really doesn't happen much, honestly. It's maybe 2 or 3 times in the weekend where that ever comes up, because it's kind of done enough in the sales letter. Like that pretty much handles it.
Right.
But then the other thing I'll do in terms of helping them see the value for them is I'll talk about the importance of back end in marketing.
Uh-huh.
So, there's the front end, there's the initial transaction, how much you make, but then there's the lifetime value, how much you make after that. Mm-hmm. And so I'll have them actually sometimes, and I used to do this more in my day-long workshop when it was a slightly different format, but I'll actually give people like 3 or 4 minutes to just do some ballpark numbers on like, what's the back end for your business currently? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that might be $200, but it might be 10,000. And then I'll actually go around the room and I'll have people share. And so, and I tell people, it's like, look, I have you do this because one, it's just good to know the implication of these marketing tactics.
Yep.
Like if you screw up, it's not just you lost $20, you potentially lost, 500
yes,
on the back end, but also it's like, I do want to help these marketing approaches land as a little more significant to you, because, when I talk about hub marketing, that's the idea of finding hubs. It's like, let's just say
that's one of your best terms. I really like it. It's the idea of, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but you go where your ideal clients are in groups, and you can show up as a speaker there, as a guest blogger there, as a networker, as an influencer there. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And so the example is, let's say you find somebody who could host a workshop for you,
right, or
a series of workshops. And over the years, they could be a good hub.
Yeah.
Let's say conservatively, if they're a really good hub, well, let's say, ballpark 10 new clients from them. Mm-hmm. So it'd be easy to look at it as like, well, I charge $100 for a coaching session. So 10 new clients, that's $1,000.
Right.
But if you realize like, oh, my back end on average is, let's say, $500 a client for coaching, because some stay for a long time, some don't, then it's actually 10 times 500 is $5,000. Oh. So, then it's like every new hub is $5,000 in your account. So at the end, when I say, I want you to consider what this could do for your business, like how many new clients you might get. And I want you to think about the back end, not just the front end. Mm-hmm. So I talk about that earlier on. So when I come back to it at the end, it's not a new idea, because that's the thing what Nick Nicholas was talking about. That would be too much. You know what I'm saying? Like if I suddenly right at the end with the pay what you can, it's like, to help you understand the value and what you can pay, think about the back end. And then I do the whole education about back end and just like half an hour talking about that. And like, look at all these tactics now through this number. And I have them figure out the number right there. It would just be so much. And it would definitely feel like pressure, versus if I do it on like day one.
I see.
When it comes to, I can just sort of reference it.
Yeah. And for those who are doing workshops on life transformation, personal growth, that kind of thing, the analogy to it would be early on to talk about, imagine the change that you could have in your life if you implemented these ideas. Imagine what that might be worth to you. Not, of course, some people say, well, that'd be worth $1 million to me. But the idea is that it is profoundly valuable. Yeah,
you can help contextualize it for people, just like, and I just think it's important to be real with people. Like when I ask them to do the lifetime value, if I'm cajoling them to do anything, it's to bring the number down. I'm saying like, be conservative. Like worst case scenario.
Yeah.
What is it? Because it's important for me that you feel when you look at this number, you're like, well, at least that.
Right.
Because otherwise, everything I say about it after that will land as hype. So a similar thing where it's like, okay, let's say you apply this stuff in your relationships. I mean, how much time will it save you?
Right.
How much money might it save you? How much frustration and stress? Like, I don't know exactly how I do it because I've never done that kind of workshop in that way.
Yeah.
But it is good to just like have it land. Like, what is the impact of all this potentially? And to do that early enough that when it gets to the end, it's already been percolating for them. Mm-hmm. So it's not a sudden pitch at the end and all this pressure to get them to, because what that will occur as is trying to get them to pay more.
Right.
And of course, it's like I want to. It's got to be sustainable for me.
So can I say a little bit about this?
Yeah.
My feeling about it, obviously you have a lot more experience with this. My feeling about it, this is too much to explain right on the front end sales page. I don't know if you've ever tried explaining less until they are in the registration process and they're kind of like, they've already invested typing in some of the application or whatever.
Right.
And, I mean, maybe in the front end to say, hey, I really want you to be part of this, and don't let money be an issue. There is a pay what you can option. Go ahead and apply. And then they're applying. At the end, say, all right, here are 4 options that you can choose right now, which one you want to do. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, that could work too. I can see that. I like the idea of framing it as like, don't let money be an issue. Because
that's exactly why you're doing pay what you can. It's like, hey, I want you to be there. If this description of this event has been so interesting and helpful for you, I mean, that you can imagine it, go ahead and apply. And then at the end, you could choose what option you want to pay with.
I dig it. You know, it's funny. My bias is always like to name the price right up front. And I know different people have sort of different takes on that.
Right. What I'm saying is you can, even before the application, say, hey, the price is $1,800, but don't let money be an issue. You could do pay what you can.
Well, you know, I guess for me, the reason I don't feel as drawn to that is because it's, I'm framing it as a pay what you can workshop, not as an $1,800. Like I'm framing it as, this is a pay what you can workshop that I would probably charge $1,800 for if I was doing it that way.
Right.
So I think it's a slightly different, but I think what you're saying is beautiful, because I mean, this is the thing, that there's no kind of right or wrong way to do this. So somebody might say, no, I still like the idea of having a flat fee, but I like the idea of having it be more accessible.
Yeah.
And so adding in either a scholarship, a sliding scale, a barter thing, or a pay what you can, or a gift economy option.
Yeah.
Because that may be a better way to roll, you know, for certain people. So that could work too, you know?
Okay. That's really good. You also mentioned, I've seen you mention, talk about like, let's see here. No, I was just looking through my notes of the things I wanted to ask you. So, okay. You talked about the back end, and maybe I missed what you said here, but in a workshop like that, you're talking about the value or the payment at the end. You don't also say, hey, I've got this other coaching program that you might be interested in.
Yeah, this is the wrinkle or complication with pay what you can, or maybe not. Somebody else could probably figure this out easy, but yeah. Normally what you would do is they've already paid for the weekend before they came, or it's a free weekend, or the money's handled. So when they get to the end, or the Saturday night, or whenever they drop the hammer, it's the then it's like, hey, there's this thing and it costs more money. Whereas when I'm doing it, they're actually not paying until the very end.
Right, sure.
Kind of, which is modeled after like how street performers do shows. You don't pay until the very end of the show, and it's already over. Yeah. So what I could do if I was, but I also haven't had anything else to offer. I haven't had like an advanced weekend or a huge coaching program. Yeah. So there's a couple options, and people can kind of figure out what's best for them. One is you do the payment. And then you have 15 minutes after that, and you say, now I'd like to talk about the next level stuff. Another option could be you say, so look, now it's time to pay what you can. And if you'd like to sign up for this much more expensive coaching thing, whatever you pay today can go towards that.
Nice.
You know, so you could do that, and that would definitely land as very generous. I would just say, with all of this, and with that type of a move, make sure it's not coming from a place of collapsing. You know, that's not coming from a place of there's the overgiving that you and I have talked about.
Yeah, and I'm going to put a link to that blog post about posturing versus collapsing. Yeah.
Because it's easy to do that, to be like, oh, and well, we'll just throw in the money towards that. I would just say, just look at the numbers, and if it still feels exciting for you. you're like, yeah, I would still be really excited to make the kind of money, even if whatever they paid for the weekend went towards this.
Yes.
Do it.
Okay.
But it's it's something to experiment with. You might do it 1 week and say, look, I may never do this again.
Yeah.
I'm seeing what the response is, but yeah.
Okay. I thought of another option, which is to do the offer for the next level after the weekend is over via email or phone.
Yeah, totally. You could also do that. The thing I would say is probably good to seed that during the weekend. And you can even frame it then as like, look, there's an advanced level thing. I will follow up with you afterwards, but here's the deal with it. It's, and then you give your best 2-minute pitch. We're like, here's why you're going to want to check that email. This is a solid thing. Here's who it's for. Here's who it's not for. Here's why you should sign up, pipe. And then, and then you send the email, but I would be framing it and then making sure they know it's coming. And also it's like, hey, and if you really want to get in on this, email me.
Totally. That's really good. So real quick, given all these years of experience you've had with this, what are you going to do differently next time you do Pay What You Can?
Good question.
If there is anything you're going to do differently.
Yeah. Well, and I also do want to talk about the multiple payments thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which we haven't touched on, which is one of the biggest things I've learned about it. But in terms of next time, it's a lot of little tightening, like around probably making sure that on the registration form, it's really confirming that they get the whole Pay What You Can structure.
Yeah.
I would do that tighter. Probably make sure I talk about it a little more, spend a little bit more time on the first morning. Just really kind of framing it and setting it up. Because the more you can do before you get to that last moment, like the dream for me, Pay What You Can is just like, here's my hat, put the money in. Like it's that light a touch at the end.
Yeah. Because
that's the moment when it's going to go terribly wrong if it does.
Yes. Right.
We've talked about this before, but I had colleagues of mine who I endorsed for a workshop, and then right at the end they did that big, heavy pitch.
Yeah.
And it was like everything had been great right until that moment. So this can all go terribly wrong near the end. Yeah. So probably that, and I don't know. I'll probably. It's always just trying to make it clearer, because sometimes what happens, and this is just a thing to be aware of, people, if you're not really clear about in the sales letter and the promo videos coming up, leading up to it, people will show up and be like, oh, I didn't realize it was Pay What You Can, or, oh, I thought the deposit was the full thing.
Yeah.
So those are things that can start to happen. So even in the registration form, it can be like, I understand the $100 is just a deposit. I'll pay the rest at the end of the workshop. Check this box, like that.
Yes.
You want to be, you can't be too clear about the money, because it's such a different thing. It's so unusual that it can confuse people. I'm wondering if I should turn my porch light on.
If you want, I think it's okay actually so far. So talk about the multiple checks.
Yeah. So here's what I found. A lot of this I discovered in Toronto during my workshops there. And, the first time I did Pay What You Can, I was in Fairfield, Iowa, and nobody had signed up for my weekend workshop, which I was charging $1,500, $1,800 with a bunch of follow-up coaching sessions. And so I had an intro that night, and 16 people came, and literally I'd been there the year before. I was like driving to the thing, and I was seeing people I knew on the street being like, come to my workshop. 16 people came, and it was a desperate last-ditch effort. I was like, look, nobody signed up, just come. No follow-up, I'll take that out, but just come to the weekend, pay whatever you want to pay at the end. And 12 people signed up. And so, and Fairfield's a smaller town, and so word spread is a little easier, but they paid them. So it just went from making nothing to making something. That I did it in Halifax, and I did a bunch of intros to fill a workshop of 20 people, a weekend workshop, and it filled like super fast. And then, so we moved it to a bigger venue that could hold 40. And then it turned into, that sold out. So we did another workshop. So we did 2 workshops of 40 based on 9 intro workshops leading up to it. And so
9 intro workshops, not a series of 9. It's just 9 separate.
9 separate, like 2-hour workshops at this yoga studio.
Yeah.
I became like pretty popular in Halifax for that time period. And so anyway, so it was great. And then I was doing them again. And for me, it was just no problem. But I started to see something after a few years was people would come up to me at the end with the payment in the envelope, sometimes crying, feeling very guilty and saying, I want to pay you more, but this is all I can afford. They're going to shut off my phone if I don't pay that. Like, this is it.
Wow.
And it was like half the people. Even after, and this is after I did the whole taking the pressure off pitch at the end, whatever you pay is okay.
Yeah.
And they were still wrecked by the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not sustainable. They will avoid me if they see me on the street after this because they think they owe me something.
Yes.
So I'm like, this is no good. So then I decided I changed it. And man, I was so nervous before I did this the first time. So I'm like, how do I help people receive this? But I said, the deal is there was a deposit. I said, but you'll pay with 3 payments at the end. That's the catch.
Yeah.
3 payments, 3 checks for any amounts.
Yes.
For any dates.
Yes. Oh, wow.
You can spread them out how you want. But that's the deal. And I just told people straight up, it's like, look, what I'm realizing is entrepreneurs are very cash flow poor.
Yes.
They don't have a lot of money right now. And if it's spread out, it's easier. And so I'm offering basically a payment plan that you decide on.
Pay what you can, payment plan.
It went from like 150, 200 per person at a weekend workshop, which I was younger and I was just like, this is great. It's amazing. People just $200 for everybody. And it moved it to like the $300 to $400 range.
Wow.
And then the shift I made was 4 checks spread out over a year. And that moved it to the $600 to $800 range. So the last workshop I did in Toronto was $650 a person.
Wow.
On average. Because of the multiple payments. And so I was doing it via check and I kind of stopped doing the multiple payment. Well, I stopped doing as many weekend workshops because I think I got stymied because people didn't have checks as much anymore. They wouldn't bring those to the workshops.
Right.
Or checkbooks. And so then what I do now is I've got a little form they get at the end and it's got just like payment 1, 2, 3, 4. Like what's the amount? What's the date? And just write it in. So if you're doing PayPal, and then for the most part, I ask people, please make a note of this yourself. Of course, you send it, but I also make a note and I'll just sometimes send a PayPal invoice to people or if they want to do an email money transfer, that kind of thing. And I'll just follow up with them. And I've got a little envelope of checks in my, room. Yeah. And I just, today's a day for a check. And I've got that all kind of captured somewhere that I get reminded.
Got it.
But that multiple payment thing, and here's the other thing too. When I did the 3 checks, it dramatically cut the amount of guilt I was getting at the end. And with the 4 checks, it's gone. I don't get any more guilt at the end. Wow. People are just like, they're actually like, this feels like the right amount to pay. And I'll also tell people, say, look, the reality is if you can pay an amount that feels appropriate now, that feels like the amount you'd want to pay, 1 check is fine. Right. But I understand it's a lot easier, and I would rather you go easy on yourself and spread it out so it feels easy for you and comfortable than stressing yourself out about it. And
by this point, they already have been educated on the value of such a workshop so that they have that total amount in their head already. Yeah. So that it's easier. Yeah. Yeah, because then that's the thing. With 4 checks, people are just able to get a little closer to that, and I wouldn't go beyond a year. I just think that for me, that feels like the right amount. Beyond that starts to feel like a weird, clingy relationship thing. Yeah. But a year seems to feel good. But I would say somewhere between 6 months to a year, letting them do that payment plan, and in fact, making that part of it. It's like, I'll tell people, it's like, this is just the one weird wrinkle. Right. How I do pay what you can for a weekend. Yeah. It's a payment plan thing. And here's why. So it's people feel less guilty. I make more money. Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's a weird wrinkle. It's a benefit. It's just that's it. Yeah, sure. It's a helpful option for some people. So one thing we haven't talked about, maybe we touch on it if you want, is the fact that you add so much value in the workshop. The workshop is a transformational experience. It's not a long lecture. Not like today we're just lecturing and talking, but the workshop, you have exercises, you have interaction, you have Q&A, you have hot seats. Yeah. And so that like, this is why you're getting people coming up to you at the end of the workshop saying, man, I really want to pay you more. Is
Right.
because their lives during that workshop has felt really transformed. They're impacted.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could say it's always as interactive. Sometimes I talk a lot, but this is the thing with the Pay What You Can that I love about it is it puts you on the hook as the workshop provider.
Yes.
You do a good job. Like a street performer, you can't go on the street
right.
and do a mediocre show and expect to get
it's a meritocracy for sure.
You've got to do a really good show. And people look at street performers and be like, wow, they're so good at juggling. Like as if that's the main trick. It's like, no, the main trick, the main skill they have is they got 100 people to stop, watch their whole show, and pay them.
Yeah.
That's the art of it. And but the way they did that, the fundamental engine of it is they gave such a great performance that you want to give them money. You're so happy. Like I was in Portland one time and this guy, we were at a burrito shop and this older guy came up and he's like, so now I don't want to bother you, but I'm living in a hotel outside of town and I got this thing I do where I'll do 3 backflips. You pay me whatever you want, 3 backflips in a row. And it was like, this is a scam for sure.
Right.
He's like 50 years old.
Wow.
But he was so charming about it. And he just had this whole kind of thing. And I was like, all right. And he gathered a little crowd. And then bam, bam, bam. He did 3 backflips in a row. And man, people just pulling out 20s. And like, so, it's like how do we, instead of pressuring people, manipulating people, tricking people to pay, how do you give such a performance?
Yes.
How do you give so much value that at the end they're just like inspired to give?
Yes. Right.
That's true for fundraising as well.
Of course. Yes.
You can guilt people into it, or you can be like, here's the story of our organization, and it's no pressure to give. But what you want is at the end people being like, there's zero external pressure they're feeling.
Yes.
And so it's not even a pressure. There's just a welling up.
Yes. Of gratitude, excitement, and wanting to see the work go on. Yeah. And so that's really I would call that deliberate practice of continuing to improve our workshop and our event and our thing, that it gets better and better and better over time. So one last question, Tad, is I feel like if somebody watching this really wants to implement Pay What You Can, it would serve them to experience Pay What You Can in the setting that you provide. And so have you ever done a virtual workshop as Pay What You Can? If so, I want to invite people to sign up for that.
No, do you mean teaching people how to do Pay What You Can, or like offering it on Pay What You Can basis?
I could be teaching people how, but yeah, like offering an online experience and then have it be Pay What You Can.
I haven't, but Mark Silver has. He does it once a year where it's a pay from the heart, he calls it. And he says it's done pretty well for him, and it's a good lead generator because the risk is so low.
Yeah.
No, I've never done it. I've never done it online. Sometimes these things I just get daunted by the technicalities of it, like is it a donate button and how to, and
Oh man, we could talk through that. That shouldn't hold you back, man.
But it's funny. I haven't. There's certain things that just feel so good for me to just charge a flat fee for.
Yeah.
And there's some things that it feels better to do Pay What You Can. So I guess this would be my encouragement to everyone is like to look at your business model, because your business model has to sustain you. It's got to work for you.
Right.
But there's always this tension of like, how does it sustain me, but also be accessible to people who I'd like to have access to it. And some people want to do a lot of one-on-one coaching. Some people rather do workshops. Some people want to, make their money selling products. For some people, that doesn't feel like the thing.
Yeah.
So it's to really look at your model and be like, what's the thing that doing Pay What You Can would add more joy and more fun, make it more accessible. But also here, I guess maybe sort of moving towards closing thought.
Yes.
There's nothing more spiritually evolved about doing Pay What You Can. And I just would like to disabuse anyone of this notion that this is a more authentic, more real,
Yeah.
more ascended at all. It's a different business model. It's a different structure.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work for you and you keep doing it, that's collapsing.
Right.
So I just have seen people go, oh, it's so noble what you do. And it's like, did you hear me say the part about more selfish reasons than selfless?
Yeah.
Like, yes, I get that it has that too, but I see a lot of people thinking like, well, I'll do all my workshops on a sliding scale. Mark Silver wrote this article about it called The Horrors of the Sliding Scale. Because what his experience was people do sliding scale, but what they were really doing is like, I don't want to deal with my money shit, so you deal with it. I'll figure it out. Yeah. And you can feel it. You can feel this like, oh God, this is like terrible to be in the presence of the weight of this unprocessed stuff.
Right. No, that's really helpful to hear. Okay, awesome. I'm going to let you go, man, and before you get swallowed up by the darkness there of the night. What is any closing thought that you want to share, or what you're working on? Anything you want to share?
Any closing thoughts? Try it. Try the people you can. Pick even if it's one workshop.
Yeah. Try
some of the things we've been talking about just to see how it feels, how it works for you.
Yeah.
Don't commit to it for your whole business.
Right.
Don't commit to it for all your workshop. You might just try it, and it's a fun thing because then it can be a special promo. You put it like, just this one time, I'm trying Pay What You Can to see how it goes. Yeah,
you'll certainly learn a lot, and you may end up really enjoying it, and that may be a whole new model for you to support yourself with. Because am I right to say that you most of your income comes from Pay What You Can workshops?
It did in the beginning. It was almost 100% of it. Wow. Now I've got more ebooks and online courses on fee, but absolutely in the beginning, because it was free workshops, intros.
Yeah.
To the Pay What You Can week. So that's literally all of my income, pretty much. I did some one-on-one, but almost all of it came from that.
That's awesome. So people can find you at marketingforhippies.com, and I do recommend people go there. You've got 600 blog posts. If you all want to save time, get Tad's ebooks. They're like $40 per ebook, but their ebooks, I know myself, they're amazing, and I keep hearing rave reviews from people about your ebooks. So do get it. He basically puts and curates all of his best knowledge into these ebooks. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Tad.
Thanks, George.
Good stuff, as always.